Hello there, welcome back. We're gonna basically go over some updated thoughts for today. As basically over the past, I don't know, 9 hours really, I've changed my opinion quite dramatically about how today's gonna go. But we still have that moderate risk across much of northern, going into central Minnesota, going into extreme southeastern North Dakota, and as well as eastern South northeastern South Dakota, and enhanced risk surrounding that as well, going driving down to Iowa into Missouri, going to Kansas too. That's where we'll be probably seeing another area really some tornadic potential. So maybe along the warm front too. There's numerous really target areas throughout today. You can target the south along the cold front, or you can go for the north, targeting the surface low. We'll probably get turned linear pretty quickly though. But maybe I'll think probably the greatest potential probably will be lying out ahead of the line to along the warm front. That's where you're gonna be probably seeing the greatest potential for some strong tornadoes. But even given the really impressive kinematics in place for today, wouldn't be surprised as well to see many strong tornadoes, especially embedded within the line that's going to be developing. So mostly the main threats, numerous tornadoes. More of a tornado outbreak is anticipated with a 10%, with a 15% covering much of the moderate risk area, as well as another 10% along the cold front. So mostly well overnight, and 45% wind. This is going to be quite an area maybe where you could potentially, where maybe a derecho might be possible in all honesty, with 30% significant hail across much of the stretch all the way from South Dakota and Minnesota, going further south into Kansas. So let's take a look at surface observations real quick. We see time of surface low into near the Minnesota, North Dakota border. So maybe another one seems to be a tiny bit more. Another surface low further off to the south. See a tiny bit some, but seems to be a tiny bit in the mid 990s. But it seems like the further south, similar surface low seems to be a tiny bit deeper in the low 990s. Seeing a few stations picking up 992, 993. So see a tiny bit some back surface flow, tiny bit back down the southeast across much of the region, and we were already seeing dew points well in the 60s across Iowa, as well going to southern Minnesota, with temperatures well in the 70s. Into Minnesota, it's a tiny bit cooler. We see probably some cloud cover over the region because of those we have some short waves moving through. So some early morning convection, if we take a look at 700 millibars, we see a few short waves. See one, especially caused those storms up in Minnesota. We see another one, it seems, for the south. That's what initiated those storms down there. But take a look at the overall 500 millibar view. We see this maturing trough right there. Strong flow rounding the base of the trough. We see a short wave over Kansas. That's going to be strengthening rapidly throughout the day. We already see 80 knots of flow. That's going to keep strengthening. We could be seeing upwards around 100 knots of that mid-level jet. That's going to be really streaming across much of quite impressive kinematics in place for today. We could take a look at some photographs. We might take a look at some soundings actually. We see some really large photographs. So you can anticipate really with probably a strong low level jet in place. Yep. Take a look at back in the we see widespread 50, 55 knots and across further southward, basically at the southwest. Time of veered, but it's gonna keep that little jet's gonna back throughout the day, and that's gonna really help with that warm moist advection. But take a look at source region. I mean, it's still going right into the Gulf, so I don't really think it's gonna be much. Moisture issues are gonna be an issue. So take a look at some soundings. 1 minute, and we'll take a look at some soundings and see what those are showing. Guess we'll take a look at Minneapolis, and warmer seems to be a tiny bit back in with them heights. So I mean, it's still, I think it's probably north of the warm front. See a tiny bit 66 over 59. Quite strong inversion aloft. It's probably due to that tiny bit north of the warm front. So we'll take a look at. And see a tiny bit moist layer going up to 800 millibars it seems, and 75 over 67. We see a tiny bit of that inversion in place. Strong warm air advection it seems. We see large photographs in the low levels. Decently strong low level jet. 1 kilometer winds at around 40 knots. So I think that's safe to say warm air advection. We'll take Aberdeen, pretty moist. As this is because of the morning storms that's been moving through. So we'll take a look at the rep. We'll take a brief overview. We won't probably go too much in that, and then we'll take a look at cams, and then what the HRAF shows, and we'll go from there. So throughout the day, this flow is going to be really strengthening already, going up to near 100 knots. Pretty potent shortwave. Close circulation up into the Dakotas, and that's going to keep deep. Surface is going to keep deepening overnight. Quite an impressive jet streak early, and that little jet's going to weaken throughout the day as a normal diurnal cycle. But once we get into the late afternoon, that little jet's going to be really ramping up, going to around 50, 60 knots, widespread. So basically a tiny bit. So throughout the day, tiny bit tends to back, and then guess where the main little jet axis is strongest seems to be a tiny bit veered as we get into the overnight. But again, not really much of an issue. We'll see how this moisture really times out. We see that cold front just further to the south, and take a look at 21Z. We see quite a sharp cold front really. So time of a surface low, triple point into the Dakotas. So we'll take a few soundings. We'll see really how these look. And then so this is into South Dakota near the triple point. See pretty cool, 69 over 67. Ample level of instability though. Guess this is saw Karen Nixon. This is a catafrontal setup as it tends to really has higher level buoyancy, which of course is why we're seeing instability rise within all these soundings, except for this one actually. Well over 100 to even 200 joules per kilogram. But also weaker in back mid-level shear. So with that speaking, guess the QLCS mode is favored, but like supercells could still produce again, well, as we mentioned today. So despite QLCS mode being encouraged, wouldn't really some long track tornadoes are still possible, given that we're seeing quite ample veering, we're seeing quite substantial speed shear aloft. But seeing some, but yeah, I guess what's on. So anyways, we'll take a look at 0Z. We'll take a look at some more soundings. We'll take one to Iowa, further south into even Kansas, and then into Minnesota. I guess probably time further north into South Dakota. So this is our first one. This is near the Missouri, Iowa border, and we can see seeing quite a bit of veering in the low levels. 68 knots of effective shear, quite ample. Despite talking about some contamination, seems. I think the sound is pretty representative, but ample low level instability as what really. So that's going to be supportive of a tornado threat, assuming storms form there. This is further south. Time is seeing a stable layer. That's why we see a time it's like convective inhibition still. 2/68. A lot weaker ascent in the sounding. But again, pretty supportive. 82/68. This is into Minnesota. This might be. I'd be a tiny bit weary about that low level photograph. I think it's gonna, of course, it's gonna be a bit smaller. Due to it being inflated, just in an updraft, it seems, or some background convection. But yeah, basically, still very supportive of those what we've really mentioned. And again, this is 68/60/68. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if I buy that. But this is into central or west central Minnesota. So, and this is near the triple point. Oh yes, 20 bit. Oh, that's a big that's pretty contaminated. So, I'm not gonna really. But we can take it sounding near the warm front, I guess. Seems to be at this time around 0Z. Seems to be into Canada. You see those surface winds turn a tiny bit more southward. So we'll take a few soundings along it. At least take another one for south right here when we see a time of that pressure tongue. This is into Canada. You can see ample streamwise vorticity. Decent low level scent. So but a tiny bit cool, of course, but weaker kinematics also, but in established supercell, given that streamwise vorticity combined with low level instability in place, I think any supercell, this is really the same story. It's sounding too like despite kinematics being a tiny bit weaker, supercells still could be supported up here. So assuming any develop, those would probably support a tornado threat. This is further south into, this is along the pressure tongue. Seems to be another warm front, and that's a really large photograph. This is really probably along that pressure tongue. That's where you'll be probably seeing the greatest potential for some long tracked strong to particularly intense. As you see those large lupinograph, ample storm relative felicity. If we take a look at that, pretty streamwise at the surface, and pretty streamwise actually in the low levels. So that's definitely supportive of some, if any supercell could be established, of course. The environment is very much there for long tracked intense tornadoes. So guess we'll have to keep an eye. That's something to keep an eye on as we go into this evening. But let's take a look at surface profiles. Of course, we're seeing temperatures basically well into the 70s across an hour ahead. But again, we have a tiny bit of a cold front aloft, so weaker. Actually, I wouldn't say weaker, but see a tiny bit. Some temperatures well in the 70s, going even 80s for the south. So I think really we're taking a look at some pretty decent surface profiles. We'll take a look at the high resolution thermal forecast, and then we'll close it out here. Take a look at this. Jet streak really, the mid-level jet ramps up throughout the day. We're going to up to 90, 100 knots. So that continuously really ejects northward. We'll have to see how strong that surface low gets. And we have that tight pressure gradient, strong surface winds up in the around 980s. And that's going to keep deepening throughout the night, of course. Take a look at 850 millibars. We'd anticipate that low-level jet weakening throughout the day. Yep, going to around 40, 45, 40, 50 knots, and then that rapidly strengthens throughout the night. Getting to 0Z, we see around a 50, 55 knot low-level jet in place. So, take a look at those dew points, I guess, real quick. See widespread 60s to would be close if we have a pool of 70s earlier into Iowa and Minnesota maybe. But I think 60s, upper 60s seems to be the best bet at this time. So let's take a look at the cams. We'll see what those are showing. Take these with a grain of salt, really. Anyways, let's get right into it. So anyways, again, time at the morning convection still going to be ongoing. Might be a time of an issue, but the herd really initializing quite a big squall line or MCS throughout going to around the early afternoon hours. The time at some prefrontal supercells, maybe along that pressure tongue that we talked about, and maybe seems to be a time of a lone one. Further south, probably some further initiation, some supercells, and then before turning into really a mostly linear mode overnight going into the early morning hours. Let's take a look at the NSSL. Seems to be pretty much showing a very linear mode as well. Initializing in South Dakota, going to Minnesota, rapidly moves northeastward with with some storms down in Iowa. A few pretty much goes linear really quickly. I guess due to the high forcing in place. Let's take a look at the ARW. Initializes. Well, it seems like most of these have been showing storms up into South Dakota and into Minnesota. That's where before really predominant linear mode. I think this is as well as further south. We have more supercells. It seems it's possible. FE3 showing quite a lot of supercells really before going linear, tiny bit bullish. That's something. So I don't know how much I really buy that. And further south, supercells again initiate, and the MCS develops overnight. Then take a look at the neighborhood 3 kilometer, and it seems to be initializing. And when MCS really goes upscale really quickly, that high forcing near the surface low, that rapidly heads off to the northeast. The south just basically goes instantly linear. Don't know how much I really buy that, but to recap, see significant tornado and wind threat throughout today. Mostly throughout the evening and overnight hours, but numerous tornadoes are expected. Some significant damaging winds, widespread as well, but it's one concern really. Due to a linear mode, I think really derecho can't be really technically ruled out on a day like today, but I think it's time more conditional. But on the pressure tongue, numerous a few supercells are possible. Those are gonna be those are established. Given those low level kinematics, ample streamline vorticity, and low level instability, definitely a long track tornado threat right there alone. But it's definitely, today could be looking really mean, in all honesty, and that's excuse me, and I think it's really all I have to say for today. So I'll be probably back for a nowcast discussion when storms are really initiating or right before. We'll take a look at. I'll be watching surface observations closely, but apart from that, that's really it. And goodbye.